Hi everyone and welcome back to the garden. As you can see, I'm joined by Max today, who's using this high position to sniff out anything attacking the garden, or basically just to make filming these videos as awkward as humanly possible. He does a good job of that. But also, yet another hazard. There's big thunderstorms on the horizon, slowly heading over, so it's really dark and gloomy, and I'm half expecting it to really chuck it down. Which, let's face it, wouldn't be great for the video, but should be absolutely fantastic for the garden. With the temperatures warming up late this month, the growth will be off the charts. Also, yet another hazard. There's a load of bees up in the tree above me, the cherry tree. They've started, well, they actually swarmed a couple of days ago, and they're now sort of hanging around one of the branches. So if you see a lot of bees behind me, then just let me know, because, well, I don't fancy running inside screaming my head off. But anyway, on with the video. So yeah, things got rained off last night. A few minutes after I filmed that last clip, it started absolutely chucking it down. So the garden on the plus side is really well watered. But anyway, I wanted to come out again this morning and finish the video off. And what I want to do today is look at two different banana plants. The two most commonly available here in the UK, and the ones that you're most likely to see in supermarkets and garden centres, and just go through the differences between them and how it really affects the care requirements. So the first banana plant I'm going to look at is this one here, a Dwarf Cavendish. And as you can see, they're a lovely looking sort of stereotypical banana plant. They hold the leaves really well, they don't droop down much, and they've got beautiful sort of brown mottled to them. So it's a cracking pattern, and it looks even better when the sun's behind it shining through. They're a cracking looking plant, and definitely they can make a fantastic addition to your summer tropical garden. They're also very cheap to buy as well. You can get smaller plants than this for around £3 from supermarkets and garden centres, or a good specimen like this here, which is a nice sized plant, for around £20 to £30 maybe. So they're not ridiculously expensive, but the only issue with these is that they're not frost hardy. So in some ways they're similar to the Ensete ventricosa morellii, the banana plant relative, which I plant out in the summer display here to bring those huge jungly sort of paddle-like leaves. But the issue with the Dwarf Cavendish is that it's even more tender still. So whereas the Ensete is fine getting down to sort of single digit temperatures, the Dwarf Cavendish, I know the figure usually quoted about 10 degrees. Now, I know they can handle a bit under that, but the reality is, if you keep them under 10 degrees for any length of time, they're definitely not happy. So like the Ensete, it's a plant that you would bring out for your summer display. So that can be in a big pot, or you can plant it out into the ground and dig it up at the end of the year. But like I was getting at, Ensetes are fine being dry stored over winter, whereas the Dwarf Cavendish, it won't like that, and it'll shrivel up and most likely die. So what I found is you need to keep them as a house plant over winter. And keeping a banana plant as a house plant means a lot of light, and you want to slow the water down a bit over the winter months. Ideally, if you've got a conservatory, that would be the perfect home for your Dwarf Cavendish. And I actually used to have a large one at our old house in a 70-litre pot, and I kept it in the conservatory until it literally touched the roof with its leaves. Although it's called Dwarf Cavendish, they can easily get to over 2 metres tall, and the exciting potential is that they can actually bear edible fruit, unlike the other bananas that I grow in the garden. So obviously that was what was spurring me on to keep growing it. It got too tall, so I thought, let's overwinter it in the polytunnel or the garage, and it definitely didn't make it. So they're a plant, ideally you've got a long-term home for it inside, then you can bring it out in the summer months. But either way, even if it does get too tall, you can just chop that stem back, and there'll be other small pups growing up around it that will soon replace it. So it's a fantastic plant as a house plant for the winter months, somewhere bright, somewhere that sees a lot of that winter sunlight, but in the summer months you can bring it outside and it will really add to your garden or tropical display. And just to add on to the end of that, one thing I would say for both the Ensete and the Dwarf Cavendish is that you're very unlikely to get them through a winter outside, even with protection. So I know a lot of people talk about putting straw around them or fleecing them, putting something over the top. In all honesty, you're very lucky if you do manage to get an Ensete through the winter that way. A Dwarf Cavendish, you've got pretty much zero chance of doing it. So honestly, if you can, bring it inside for winter, or if you really want to, buy a small plant for £2 or £3, use it as summer bedding, and then put it on the compost heap. Because the reality is, any effort you put into keeping that alive over winter is pretty much going to be wasted. So the next banana plant we're going to look at is this one here, a Musa Basjoo. And I've actually done a full video looking at the care of these. Again, it's that one I linked to earlier, I put another link to it just up there. But these are a banana that can be hardy in the UK. And as you can see, they're a brighter green. There isn't really any marking on the leaves other than a slightly sort of red middle to them. But they're a beautiful looking plant. The leaves do tend to get a bit damaged by the wind, by the sun, but you can't really get worried about each particular leaf because during the summer they do grow that quickly, they can put out a new leaf a week. As you can see there, one's actually bent over in the wind, but it's just part of having a Basjoo. In terms of appearance, they've probably got a more slender stem, and again they grow in a clump, so they put up pups around the base, and it'll gradually expand over time to form multiple plants. But the leaves in these do tend to drop down a bit, so they're quite arching, and definitely a lot bigger than the Dwarf Cavendish. So whilst they can look similar when they're small, the Musa Basjoo's definitely got brighter green leaves and it tends to grow taller quicker. So the Dwarf Cavendish looks like quite a compact looking plant when it's young and it has a lot of leaves on a very short stem, whereas the Basjoo wants to grow straight up, so it tends to have a few less leaves, and obviously when they get to a half decent size you can really tell from those big arching green leaves. It's a definite Basjoo giveaway. Now the reason why Basjoo are such a fantastic plant is that they're actually hardy in the UK, especially when they get to a larger size. If you bought a small one recently, I know a lot of garden centres sell them, you can get them from online specialists, places like Turnip Tropical have got stock at the minute I think, and down south even some of the supermarkets like B&M have got them in stock. But Musa Basjoo is a plant, if you're buying it in around the sort of 2 litre pot, something that's around a foot tall, personally now we're in July and we're already a good bit into the season. I know this year's been a shorter season than most. What I'd do is actually have it in a larger pot this year. So it's something you can keep growing on and then move it into a greenhouse or a polytunnel in its first year. So whilst they're a very tough, very hardy plant when they get bigger, in a smaller size, that first winter tends to be the sort of crucial bit where they're either going to make it or they won't. So ideally, if you've got two, plant one out in your garden and keep one in a larger pot. So the one that you saw just then, which is around 2.5 foot tall, that one I will be planting out this summer because I'm happy it's already got to a certain size in its pot. It'll also grow well over the next few months, put on some serious size and be big enough to protect. But the one, like the one I'm actually giving away in my competition, that's around the foot tall. Something like that I'll pot up into a larger pot so I can keep it in the polytunnel or the greenhouse as a sort of insurance policy, and hopefully it'll definitely survive until next year. There's nothing stopping you growing the Musa Basjoo as a houseplant over its first winter. So when I say winter, I generally mean from when the first frosts come. You want to bring it inside before that point. So realistically somewhere in October for most of the UK. And you can keep it inside as a houseplant. Just slow the water down a bit over the winter months. You don't really want it to be soggy and you don't want it to be growing rapidly. And again, a conservatory is probably ideal. Hopefully somewhere you can control the temperature a little bit, but as long as it doesn't get too cold or too hot, you should be absolutely fine. Just keep the water on the minimum and it'll just keep ticking over through winter until it's ready to plant out next year. But the Musa Basjoo is a plant that as it gets bigger, it will definitely be tough and hardy in most UK gardens. So what you can do is plant it out in its second summer, so this is next year, put it out into a spot in your garden where it's got a nice bit of room around it, and the following winter, all you do is basically put 4 canes around it, wrap the whole thing with fleece and just fill it with straw, put something over the top to keep the water out, and that's all you need to do. So they're a very tough plant, although they look tatty for a lot of the year, but definitely worth having in your garden for all that massive summer growth that seemingly just comes out of nowhere. So I'll just show you the plants side by side. That's a Dwarf Cavendish. It's got a paler colour to the stem, that mottling to the leaves, and that does go as the plants get bigger, but it certainly looks attractive while they're this size. And here is the Basjoo. Definitely a bigger plant, longer leaves, and look, they've got a more arching look to them. So that's it for today's quick video, and I just wanted to put something together because I know a lot of you actually bought your first banana plant this year. So just to reiterate, the Musa Basjoo is a hardy banana when it's bigger, but if you bought a very small one, then just to be on the safe side, I'll be tempted to keep it in a bigger pot this summer, maybe bring it inside as a houseplant over winter, ideally a conservatory or something like that, where it's got plenty of light and won't just get too lanky and floppy indoors. Or you can keep it in a polytunnel or greenhouse that's ideally just frost free. It'll be able to take the cold, just not the repetitive really heavy frosts. But the Dwarf Cavendish can't take any kind of frost at all, and in reality it's best kept as a houseplant over the winter months. And when it comes to care during the summer months, a lot of these banana plants are pretty much the same. They like a lot of water, a lot of feed and a good rich soil. So practically that means if you're planting them up, if you're using a good multi-purpose, maybe try to mix in some other richer soil improve with it, or a few chicken manure pellets. I'll put links to some of these in the description below. Also keep it well watered, so that definitely means every couple of days, every few days, absolutely just flood that container with water, and while it's warm it will definitely respond really well to it. So fertiliser, I know it's a bit of a tricky one, something that gets mentioned a lot, but banana plants, they're very, very easy to look after, and really the more you give them, to a certain extent, the more you give them, the faster they'll grow. So practically what I tend to do is mix up a tomato feed, have a tomato or liquid seaweed, make it a bit stronger than the recommended instructions because I like to live my life on the wild side like that, and then I give that to the banana plant either every week or every other week, and they seem to do really well, and the amount of growth the Basjoo especially, or put on over the summer months, is absolutely amazing. So I hope you've enjoyed today's quick video and it's given you some ideas for your summer display this year. It's still not too late to add to it, and a banana plant will be a perfect choice. I'll see you all in the next video.